So who is Al Sharpton anyway? Who is this 33-year-old preacher without a church?
A number of black New Yorkers as well. He is little more than a pudgy exhibitionist who can be counted on to show up, bullhorn in hand, at every racial incident.
I often quote Mark Twain saying, "The two most important moments in life is the moment you are born and the moment you find out why you were born." I had a very troubling conversation the other day that prompted me to do this little video. Young man that I've known a while came to me and he was crushed. I mean, really crushed, because people were criticizing his work. He's in the ministry, but he's also an actor. And he said he couldn't understand why people were jumping all over, criticizing him, trying to find scandalous and derogatory things about him. And I told him, I said, you know, you very young. You don't know the road I've traveled. They call me everything but a child of God.
A blabbermouth, a loudmouth, too flamboyant, an agitator, a racist,
and I had to learn.
Yeah, right.
I was not defined by how others saw me. I was defined by how I saw myself and whether I was being true to myself. Some of you watching this don't like me. And it doesn't matter as long as I know what I'm doing. And I like me for being real. So I'm doing this video to say to you, whoever you are and whatever you do, you may not be in ministry or social justice, none of this stuff, but don't live your life worried about opposition or people that don't like you. You can turn that around. Use me as an example. The same people that call me a scam artist, a con artist, a sellout, or racial hustler and all, I kept going. And the people I respected started respecting and publicly embracing my work.
When Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had this to say about Al Sharpton.
A leader who has protested injustice with a passionate, unrelenting commitment to nonviolent action in the spirit and tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. And I am talking about your leader, our leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
The other thing that hasn't changed is the National Action Network's commitment to fight injustice and inequality here in New York City and across America. And that's not only a testament to Reverend Sharpton, it's a testament to all of you who are here tonight.
First and foremost, to Reverend Sharpton. I saw him when he first came on the scene, and I have marveled at his tenacity, at the development of his intellect, and his devotion to our movement.
August 27th. Do you know what time it is? It's at Sharpton's time. And for the next 3 hours, it's time to put aside all pretenses, deception, denial, or fronting. The time has come to keep it real on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton. A very good afternoon to all of you across the country, and good morning to our West Coast listeners, and welcome to all those listening on Sirius XM Channel 126. Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Well, I'm Dominique Sharpton. I'm Reverend Sharpton's eldest daughter. I am actually coming to y'all live from Washington, D.C. Reverend Sharpton and the entire NAN contingency from all across the country. We've got chapters pulling in from all over America as we will stand in unity and coalition on tomorrow for the March on Washington to defend the vote. I am here already in Washington, D.C., and I couldn't let this moment pass to address you all this afternoon as we're going to keep it real together. And you can certainly, as always, join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5255. 5797, 1-877-532-5797. I'm sitting in for Rev just for a few moments, just for a few segments. As we're here in Washington, D.C., Reverend Sharpton has hit the ground running, and he'll be joining us momentarily. But it feels particularly significant today because on tomorrow morning, right here in the nation's capital, I'm looking at it right now, thousands of people will gather here at the Lincoln Memorial for the March on Washington to defend the vote. And I wanted to start there today because tomorrow is not just another rally. You know, it's not just another event on the calendar, and certainly it's not about gathering at the Lincoln Memorial simply because that's where Dr. King stood 63 years ago. But tomorrow is about why people still have to stand there now. Think about that. I mean, 63 years after the March on Washington for jobs and freedom, we are returning to that same place, talking about voting rights, economic dignity, affordability, civil rights, equal opportunity. And so the question is, you know, what does that really tell us, right? What does that really tell us about where America is right now, where we are in this country? Because I think there are two ways to look at this. And, you know, you could say, Dominique, you know, 63 years later, we're still marching, you know? How much has really changed? And I understand this frustration. I get it. But, you know, there's another way to look at it. And I feel every generation has had to decide whether it was willing to defend the progress handed to it. And rights don't simply survive because somebody won them before we were born. Democracy doesn't even run on autopilot, but progress doesn't even protect itself. And people, it's the people who protect progress. And that's why tomorrow really matters. And now we hear March on Washington, and I feel like immediately everyone thinks about Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. And of course we should. Of course we should. But sometimes, you know, we remember that speech and forget the full name of the march. The March on Washington was for jobs and for freedom. Jobs and freedom. I think that matters. And because the civil rights movement understood something that we sometimes separate today even, economic justice and civil rights are certainly connected. You can't tell somebody they have freedom. You can't tell someone that they are free and ignore whether they can afford to live. You cannot talk about opportunity. You can't talk about the freedom to live and the freedom to have opportunity and ignore wages, right? You cannot talk about equality and not talk about education, right? And you certainly can't talk about democracy while making it harder for people to exercise in the most fundamental power that they have in that democracy, which is their vote. And so when tomorrow's march certainly talks about defending the vote, it also talks about affordability, and it talks about economic dignity. And that's not simply moving away from the tradition of 1963. That is the tradition. And leaders of the past and those that we look to for direction and for guidance, leaders like A. Philip Randolph, who have been fighting for economic opportunity for Black workers for decades, or Bayard Rustin, who helped to organize that enormous coalition, or John Lewis, who stood there as a young man representing SNCC, the SNCC. And Dr. King, who delivered those words that certainly changed history. But women also, like Dorothy Height, were central to the movement, even when they weren't given the platform or recognition that they deserved. Labor was there. Clergy was there. Young people were there. Civil rights organizations were there. Ordinary people were there. And I think that's important because movements aren't never just one person who's standing at the microphone. Movements are coalitions, right? And so I'll tell you something else. Being here today in Washington, D.C. actually feels different for me personally. I've really spent my entire life, entrenched in this work, entrenched in the movement, and being a part of this legendary legacy family, right? I've watched my father march and organize marches even, and I've watched him organize. I've watched families who have come to National Action Networks during some of the worst moments of their lives because they felt nobody else was listening. And now I'm sitting here hosting Keeping It Real from Washington on the day before another generation will gather at the Lincoln Memorial. And I don't take that lightly because it isn't about nostalgia. And tomorrow isn't about recreating 1963 because you can't create 1963 and we shouldn't even try. But our responsibility is to understand what they did in 1963 and to ask, well, what is required of us? What is required of us in 2026? Their issues were voting rights and jobs and segregation, discrimination, economic inequality. All circumstances are a little different, right? But listen to what we're talking about. Voting rights, affordability, wages, housing, healthcare, education, equal protection, economic security. The language changes. The fundamental question, though, remains the same. Does America work equally for everybody? And if the answer is still no, then what are we prepared to do about it? And that's where I want you all today. That's where I want to start in the program today. I don't want this to be me giving you all a lecture from Washington, D.C. This is Keeping It Real. 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We want to hear from you. And particularly, if you're listening and you're one of those people who have gotten frustrated with politics, I want to talk to you. Maybe you stopped voting. Maybe you're just tired of hearing the promises. Maybe you're saying, you know what, Dominique, none of these people are talking about what it costs me to buy groceries. I can't afford my rent. My child care is killing me. My paycheck isn't stretching. Hello? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it and be about it. Because that's what we're dealing with right now. That's what Americans are facing every single day. And if we are committed to the calling, committed to understanding where we are and what we must do, because that's actually the conversation that we need to have, not just with people who are already agreeing with us, but how do we reach the people who have stopped believing that civic participation can change anything? We want to hear from you. 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Breaking news. The issues, the stories affecting you. Now here's the news.
This is a house of justice. Marching doesn't solve a problem. Marching exposes a problem. But if somebody don't expose the problem, then nobody gonna solve a problem that you haven't forced them to deal with.
In 1963, the March on Washington was held, and there was a legislative agenda, passed the Civil Rights Bill. Today, we have a new generation that is coming forward. younger people, men and women, coming forward to take the torch and run with it.
Tried to turn it into a nightmare. We come to Wall Street rather than Washington this year to let them know you can try to turn back the clock, but you can't turn back time. We gonna keep the dream alive on Wall Street. Look at everything. I went a couple of nights to go to the Knicks game. They lost. Last night I said, I'm not even going down there. I'm going to go to bed. I got to find a Hampton on Chicago. And by halftime I said, man, they ain't going to win this game. They got 29 points. And somebody here today, you've been down. They counted you out. People say there's no way you come back. But I come to tell you, don't quit. For there's another half to play. And God will take you and let you win when the odds are against you. I know they're talking about you, but preach anyhow. I know sometimes the pews are empty, but preach anyhow. And when you get up almost where you could win, I looked at it last night and Brunson took the shot. It looked like it was going in to win the game, but the shot hit the rim and all hope was gone. But then an African named Boy OG just stretched through the crowd and he kicked in the winning shot. If you hold on, God will tip your win.
Thank you for joining us for Weekdays Live with Reverend Al Sharpton. Take the time to share this broadcast right now. Tell your friends it's time to keep it real with Reverend Al. Comment your questions now in the chat or call Reverend Al Sharpton directly on air at 877-532-5797. Now stay tuned for Reverend Al.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton. As you watch the broadcast, support National Action Network. Go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net and be involved. You can join, take your membership right online, www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Getting ready to start the program, but we need you to be part of the movement.
Keeping it real. I'm Dominique Sharpton coming to you live from Washington, D.C. We are here on the eve of the March on Washington. You can join in on the conversation today by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Reverend Sharpton has hit the ground running in Washington, D.C., and he is going to join us momentarily here on Keeping It Real. And I wanted to get into something. I think we need to talk about it honestly. I started talking about this before the break, but does marching really still work? I know that some of you are asking it, so let's keep it real and answer the question. I am sitting in for Rev. He'll be joining us momentarily. But every time there's a march, someone says to me, okay, but what's walking down the street going to change? And, you know, I talk to a lot of young people especially, and there have been so many universities and young people, youth organizations who have partnered on this march, Defend the Vote. It's been astonishing to see how many young people are standing up in this moment, are raising their voice, are being really being about it and about this work. This work is not easy, and this work is not for the complacent. This work causes you to get involved, get into the action. And so I've been seeing so many young people joining us, not only here in Washington, D.C., but joining the cause, joining the coalition, understanding what time it is, right, in this country, and what we must do to stand up and elevate the causes that we want to see change and progress in the right direction. And no, a march is not the entire movement, right? A march is a tool. It's an organizing tool. It's a visibility tool. It's a coalition building tool. It's a pressure tool. And historically, I feel like successful movements combined protests with litigation and legislation, voter registration, right? Economic pressure and organizing, and also sustained public attention. Selma wasn't powerful because people walked across a bridge. It was powerful because what happened on that bridge forced America to confront voter suppression and helped to create momentum for the Voting Rights Act. The Montgomery bus boycott wasn't successful because people simply refused to ride buses for one afternoon. They sustained that action for more than a year. The action has led to somewhere. That's the point. And this is why I like something organizers have been emphasizing about tomorrow. This isn't supposed to be simply a commemoration. It's a mobilization. There is a difference. There is a difference. Commemoration says, look at what they did. And mobilization says, what are we going to do? And I think that sometimes, we've made the civil rights movement too comfortable, right? We put Dr. King on posters. We quote the parts of his speeches that everybody likes. We celebrate the victories, right, after we already know how the story ends. But living through a movement is uncomfortable. People disagree. People criticize the strategy, right? People tell organizers they're just asking for too much. People say now isn't the right time. That is not new, right? So don't look at the civil rights movement as this perfectly organized historic movie, right, where everybody knew they were on the right side. They didn't know. People made choices. And tomorrow people make another choice. Do I participate? Do I vote? Do I organize? Do I speak up? Or do I decide that none of it matters? And here's another distinction that we need to make, because voting is not the finish line either, right? Sometimes we talk about voting like, oh, just vote. Everything's going to be okay. No. Voting is how citizens hire people to exercise governmental power. Then you've got to hold those people accountable. So you vote, you organize, you attend meetings, right? You call elected officials, you challenge policies, you protest, right? You educate, you build organizations. That's democracy. So defend the vote can't simply mean that everybody go vote and then go home. It has to mean defending people's ability to vote. It has to mean making sure that their vote counts. It has to mean making sure that communities have representation. And then I think demanding that government respond to the people who put officials into office. So let me throw it to you. Do y'all believe marches still work? Don't give me the answer you think you're supposed to give me. Keep it real. And if you think we've marched enough, tell me why. If you believe that marches are necessary, tell me what needs to happen after everybody leaves Washington, D.C., because that's actually the more interesting question. What happens August 29th, right? What happens September 1st? What happens 6 months from now? 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Let's go to Ray, listening to us on Cincinnati on the Buzz. Ray, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Dominique Sharpton, how's it going?
All right, how are you?
I'm good. Let me say this. I never understood why voting is the hardest thing to do for a lot of people, especially black folks. There's a voting poll within 5 or 10 minutes of your home, but you would rather go to a mall that's 25, 30 minutes away, or to a movie that's 40 minutes away, or to a club that's 30 minutes away, rather than go someplace for 5 or 10 minutes away to improve your life. I want to comment on the common sense voter. Now, I saw J.D. Vance last week. He was at a rally for small businesses, and these small businesses are in trouble. They're supporting the Republicans. And my question to them is, you're in this situation because of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, but you're going to go to a rally and vote for Republicans that put you in this situation? Why would you vote for Republican at all if you're in this situation that they put you in? I want to comment on, how do you convince black MAGA males that who votes for Trump, that Trump is a racist and he does not like you. He does not care about you. He wish you were back in Africa, but yet and still they support this man. How do you convince them that? How do you convince young white college students with student loans who Biden wanted to forgive those loans when he was in his last year in office, and the Republicans blocked it? So how are you going to vote for Republicans who said, no, we want you to pay back your loan, than to vote for a Democrat that said, we will forgive your loans? You know, how do you convince Latinos that vote for Donald Trump that he's looking to deport your family members who is here illegally? You know, is that okay with you? You have to bring common sense questions to these MAGA voters or these Republicans who vote for Republican and who vote for Trump. Because everything I just said, it confuses, excuse my language, the hell out of me, why you're voting against your own interests. Yeah. You know, we got people here in Cincinnati that says, you know, he voted for Donald Trump because he's gangster. No lie. Because he's gangster. You know, we got people that voted for Donald Trump because they said he's a good businessman. And that's what Ramaswamy is running on here, and he's running for governor here. And that's what he said. We need a businessman. But people don't forget that Ramaswamy was on Donald Trump's team when they got rid of a lot of remember Doge? You know, and so Donald Trump, the businessman, you know, I don't think so. So, I mean, that's just what I wanted to comment on. Common sense voters, that a lot of voters out there don't have common sense when they vote against their own interests, and they have no reason why. Yeah, no, Ray, I think you're something, and thank you so much for your call. I think what we need to really delve into, and when we're talking about this demographic of people, right, who did vote that way, it's economic dignity, because that can sound very policy heavy, right? But what does economic dignity actually look like? It looks like somebody who's working 40 hours, right, and not needing 2 additional jobs just to survive, right? It looks like being able to pay your rent and still buy groceries, right? It looks like a parent not having to choose between childcare and working, right? It looks like somebody getting sick and not wondering whether getting medical care is going to financially destroy their family. So that's economic dignity, and I think that that's been oversold, right, to certain communities and certain people who feel like, you know, they made a certain decision in casting their vote that way. But, you know, if civil rights isn't reaching people's kitchen table, I think we're missing something here. And remember the 1963 Jobs and Freedom, what that original march was saying. And so it demanded economic opportunity. And so I feel like, so tomorrow or the next day when people are talking about affordability, I think that that's not some separate issue from what we're talking about here. The question becomes who gets to build wealth, how we're creating that access. And I feel like, you know, there's been an overpromise and a misstep, both two coupling each other, right, when people decided who to vote for, right? And that's what became the result that Donald Trump became president. You know, we were talking about who can buy a home, you know, whose neighborhood has the good schools, who has access to health care. I think that's what matters to people. And I feel like if we can provide that streamline of access, I think that we get that demographic and we get people to really understand, you know, what we're actually doing here, what we're fighting for, and what we're fighting to uphold. Because I feel like it hasn't hit home enough for certain communities and certain people. Thank you so much for your call, Ray. We're keeping it real. Dominique Sharpton, I'm sitting in for Rev. Rev will be joining us momentarily, but you certainly can join in on the conversation. Call us at 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Keeping It Real. Do you owe back taxes or have unfiled tax returns? The IRS won't.
But Reverend, it looks bad now. Look at Iran. Look at what's going on in Minnesota. Look on. Yeah, but I was raised by them to realize that after storms, if we do the right thing in the storm, if we organize, if we register, if we do what we're supposed to do, there's always a rainbow coming out. The rainbow don't show until the storm is over. The rainbow gonna come out in November. The rainbow gonna come out in 28. We gonna fix these tricks in 26 and march through the gates in 28. We didn't come this far to turn around now. We won't go back. We won't go back. We won't go back.
Voting rights!
Voting rights.
Everyone look here.
Say it again, Ms. Pearl.
Voting rights!
Voting rights. One more time, Ms. Pearl.
Voting rights!
There we go.
Voting rights! Voting rights!
Voting rights.
Voting rights!
Voting rights.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we need it?
Now. Yesterday.
What do we want?
Voting rights.
When do we need it?
Now.
What do we want?
Voting rights.
When do we need it?
Now.
Some of you forget where you come from and forget how you got there and act like you got there because you were qualified or that you had a good resume. But some of us had to pay a price for your resume to even be read. Some of us had to take nights in jails and licks upside the head or shut out of boardrooms like Byron so you could walk down red carpets and act like you got there by yourself. So I received this award with a special, special place in my heart and on my shelf because I'm getting it from a freedom fighter who never forgot where he came from and how he got there. Yes, we've come a long way. We've had now a black president and now a black vice president. But we still can get shot down and have to march to get a case in court. We still can get shut out of boardrooms. We're still doubly unemployed in a good economy. So we're going to have to keep marching. And I thank not only my family, a mother that raised me by herself, but I thank that lady at the end of the march that knows she won't be on TV that night and knows her name will never be in the paper, but she believed in me enough to get at the end of the line and make me look good. Because Dr. King used to say, if you call a march and no one shows up, you just going for a walk. And I want to thank those that marched with me. 32 years ago, here in Los Angeles, we marched. And then many years later, with George Floyd and others, we're still marching. And I'm going to keep marching. I'm going to keep agitating. And I'm going to keep going. Until we don't have to do it anymore. Eddie, known you a long time. Mariah, Chris, and your kids. And I promise you this. The only thing that I really live for is I get up with this dream that every bigot, every racist, everyone in this country that hates will say, damn, he's up again. And I think that is extremely important about the funding. But I also want to add how they're changing what can be taught. You have states outright saying you can't teach black history and you can't teach certain other histories and the curriculum. You have this administration that is literally taking out exhibits from the Smithsonian. So we have not only an education problem in terms of resources, we have an education problem in terms of curriculum and what people are being taught. So I have one grandchild, 6-year-old. When he gets to high school, it may be just against the law for him to learn about certain parts of American history, which includes blacks. We want to talk about slavery. We want to talk about the good side of America. Well, what does that mean? That's not history. Everything was not good. And I think that that is the threat that we've got to fight, which is why we've got to fight with the courts and the streets, because they're literally changing the textbooks as we go. As they do that, they change the opportunity, because then the fight against affirmative action is not having access to these institutions and telling these institutions This whole fight around DEI, which they started in Harvard with a black woman president. Started with them saying you can't teach diversity in an Ivy League school like Harvard. It didn't start in Little Rock at the high school. This fight, this time, was Harvard. And they went from there on. And I think that we've got to have the same resistance. If they could fight in the 50s, the ACP would have been together and deal with the question from Little Rock in terms of desegregation. Then we that are far more educated, far more economically secure personally, have no excuse in the age of what they did in Harvard not to be standing up back in this.
So we are fighting. That's why I said to deal with this DEI situation, you must be disciplined and do studying, because unless you do structural change, we'll keep coming right back to this over and over again. I spoke Wednesday night at Yale University, and I told them students, some of those brightest students in the country, Yale, Harvard, I spoke at Yale, and told them there is a structural problem, which is why Trump and Vance and President Elon Musk, they can come in and put us backward because the structure was never corrected. They walk in the door and say NDI, because structurally they can make that stand. We've got to break the corporate world from doing it and then straighten out the structure of how this country is. Why we ought to be sending people to Congress is not sending them to Congress because they had the robocalls call your house, but they're committed to the structural change of this.
Reverend Sharpton's eldest daughter. Sitting in for Rev is joining us momentarily. We are in Washington, D.C. as we are here on the eve of the March on Washington, as we will come together in a large coalition of partners and community groups and organizations and labor groups, and so many will gather tomorrow in coalition to defend the vote. And certainly you can join us in conversation today on Keeping It Real. Call us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We will be joined, as we are every Thursday, momentarily by Attorney Jennifer Jones-Austin, as we are really, really interested and waiting to speak with her as we continue to mobilize and build and really understand in all actuality how legislation and civics really affects a lot of the issues that we're fighting for and standing up for. And certainly if we are talking about healthcare or education or voting rights, there is a connection, a direct connection between mobilizing and what organizing looks like and how that affects legislation and how that affects how our issues actually get transferred into an actual law or policy or some type of thing that we know we can have sustainability and making sure that these rights are protected and continue to be and speak for us, and no matter where we are in the country and what community we reside in. And certainly, as Ray was talking from Cincinnati before the break about economic dignity and how we have to really call that role and really call those folks out, hold them accountable. I'm talking about our own even, whom we know ain't doing the right thing or whom we know is working in conjunction to hold us back. We've got to hold them accountable as well. And we have to not turn a blind eye, Ray, to recognizing when we need to speak out and we need to call even our own out and really try to inform even our own brothers and sisters that what they're doing and what they could be doing could be detrimental to our fight and what we know we need to do to protect our rights. And so if we are talking about what's been happening in Gary, Indiana, and certainly want to talk about that as well, the residents of the predominantly black city that has endured more than 2 weeks of outages, and the governor has called for an investigation. And going from Washington to Gary, Indiana, you might say, well, what does an electricity outage in Gary have to do with the March on Washington? Well, it has everything to do with it, because civil rights is ultimately about a basic question. Does the government and do these institutions that serve the public value every community equally, right? More than 2 weeks. More than 2 weeks. Think about living without reliable electricity for 2 weeks. Don't think about it abstractly. Think about your refrigerator, your medication, air conditioning, children, older relatives, right? Charging your phone, getting ready for work, Residents are sleeping in running cars, right, for air conditioning, and a 73-year-old woman with asthma unable to use her nebulizer. That's not inconvenience anymore, all right? That's safety, right? And if this happened in a wealthy suburb, would the response have looked the same? We don't automatically know the answer, right? But when residents of a predominantly black city ask whether race and decades of disinvestment affected the response, government has an obligation to investigate, right? Rather than dismiss that concern, right? So who gets urgency in America? Whose problem becomes an emergency? Whose neighborhood, right, gets that immediate attention? Whose suffering gets normalized, right? Infrastructure is a civil rights issue, and environmental justice, also a civil rights issue. Reliable utilities are an economic justice issue. And that's why tomorrow's march can't only be about what happens inside the voting booth, right? The reason the vote matters is because the vote determines who has power over decisions like these. 1-877-532-5797. Let's go to Don, listening to us in New Orleans. Don, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon, Dominic. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, great. And yes, you had asked questions, several questions. I'm going to be brief. Marching is a part of the equation and not just a form of expression. Now, if you look in and I think the late Bob Moses, for understanding how to register sharecroppers in Mississippi to vote and teach a high level of mathematics. He had the algebra project. Remember that? And when you look at mathematics, algebra, especially algebraic expressions, an equation and an expression are two different things, separated by what? An equal sign. Okay, so when we look at the generations, let's look at generation. They name them generations after variables, which are part of algebra in mathematics, algebra. Okay, generation X, you had generation Y, you had generation Z. That's the three generations that's starting at 18 years old, eligible to vote. So those X, Y, and Z are all variables. They have an unknown value. Okay, and they're the least likely to vote. Voting, marching is a part of the equation and not just an expression. First Amendment gives you the freedom of speech. That's a form of expression. But form of expression and the First Amendment is a part of an equation. So, yes, we have to understand that, and if you look at the baby boomers, the wealthiest generation, if you will, and the silent generation, which spoke softly but carried a big stick, they was very active in voting. They demanded the right to vote and petition and select those in government, not just voting for those in office, but voting as part of the equation was to have a fast seat at the table when it comes to government contracts, when it comes to the high quality of life in our communities and for services and stuff. And so as I close, that's what we have to understand when we talk about a higher order of thinking and bringing our best minds. I know we have plenty of attorneys volunteering doing pro bono work, but we also need to have the mathematicians in our midst to understand the profound effects that government and these groups use mathematical equations to eliminate us or to isolate us. And so, as in Gary, Indiana, when being in New Orleans, we experienced a number of storms on the Gulf Coast, but states utility personnel will will come and offer their services. So if you're in New Orleans, you have utility service from Florida and the surrounding states, utility linemen, very, very valuable people in the area to get utilities and power lines and trees to get this back. So I'm surprised that Illinois and Michigan and all those surrounding states haven't had the utility personnel, the electric companies, come to help assist Gary, Indiana. But yes, we must. Marching is a part of the equation and not just an expression.
Thank you so much for that, brother. And thank you for your call. As I was thinking about what you were saying, I mean, talking about Gary, I mean, how were these restoration priorities even determined, right? Were there sufficient crews and resources available? Were vulnerable residents even identified? Like, this goes deeper. What emergency assistance existed for seniors and medically vulnerable people? Were communication systems adequate? And were similarly affected communities treated similarly? I think this is where, even journalism, right, and activism actually meet, because we are not always privy to the information that's being broadcasted and what we can do to really help. When the storm is over, the lights come back and the cameras leave, it's like, what happens next? And I feel like we have too many communities that are left vulnerable, that are left unrecognized and unattended to, and we've got to do our part. I think we've got to do better with not only amplifying what's happening, but we've got to do better with identifying those solutions that are going to help, sustain us over the long run. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Thank you for your call. I hear the music. We're going to take another break. Reverend Sharpton is going to be joining us, but we're going to take a break. You can certainly join in on the conversation again by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Keep it real.
When he came to go speak at the UN, he said, I'd first go to Harlem to see those that fought for me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we keep it hung up in the house.
It's a great photo.
I'm surprised to see you here.
Kathy Burns.
Yeah, Kathy Burns.
How are you?
And my lovely wife, Lisa.
It is really a intersection of both emotions, because when I was 11 or 12 years old, so I watched the news a lot and I became enthralled with the image of Adam Clayton Powell. I was around 11 and I convinced my mother to let me come up to this church to see Adam Clayton Powell. And in those days, people in Brooklyn used to say it's dangerous to go to Harlem. And folk in Harlem used to say it's dangerous to go to Brooklyn. Now, to 135th Street, and I came, sat right back there, and Adam Clayton Powell walked down this platform. And I remember after the church, in those days, Johnson, the pastor's study was right inside with the plexiglass, and I knocked on the door and I told the secretary I wanted to meet Reverend Powell. She looked down this little 11-year-old boy. She said, "Really?" She said, "Who did I say?" I said, "Reverend Al Sharpton."
Platform means dignity. Means we're gonna walk side by side with you, or through you. We're gonna be with dignity and integrity. We don't want any more than you have, and we're not gonna accept any less than you have. That's my thought.
I see I'm in today's New York Times word puzzle, and they're asking what is Al Sharpton's title for short. It's Rev. I didn't know everybody knew that. But the people in the New York Times, they didn't call me Rev. They should call me Reverend. No. Marching doesn't solve a problem. Marching exposes a problem. But if somebody don't expose the problem, then nobody gonna solve a problem that you haven't forced them to deal with.
In 1963, the March on Washington was held, and there was a legislative agenda, passed the Civil Rights Bill. Today, we have a new generation that is coming forward. Younger people, men and women, coming forward to take the torch and run with it.
I thank God I was blessed to have both in my life. Both historic, strong figures. But if I misuse them and listen to not only figures that are not as historic as them, but figures that had nothing to do with the calling and purpose of my life, I would live confused. I'd be double-minded. I'm clear. And what I want you to do is be clear. Clear on who you are and why you are. And a lot of that will be exposed to you and others by who you are around and who you allow to enter your head. Keep people at a distance that only have a distant and unclear vision who you are and who you are supposed to be. They could be your blood relatives, but they could not be the ones that accompany you toward what you ought to be about tonight. Everybody good to you ain't good for you. Everybody that makes you laugh sometimes end up making you a joke.
I've been at every Essence Festival since 1995. I came that year with my mentor and we spoke. Well, he died in February this year, but I want to continue what he taught us, because even when times look bad, even when they look dark, I remember what my mentor taught me, Reverend Jesse Jackson. He said, keep hope alive. Even if you can't figure it out, keep hope alive. Even if it doesn't look like you can make it, keep hope alive. And remember, Jesse Jackson said that with me tonight. Let him know on July 4th from New Orleans, keep hope alive. 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 Thank you, God bless.
It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. Suffering breeds character. Character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not disappoint. You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but just know that you're qualified and you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. On tomorrow night and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much. I love you very much.
And now, America's #1 civil rights leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real. It's Dominique Sharpton. Reverend Sharpton. Reverend Sharpton is going to be joining us momentarily, as well as Attorney Jennifer Jones-Austin, as it is Policy Thursday, right? But we are keeping it real, and certainly you can join in on the conversation today. You can call us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We are here in Washington, D.C., where we're coming to you live on the eve of the March on Washington, where on tomorrow we will stand up to defend our vote. We will stand up to defend the issues that we care about. We will stand up to defend our rights. And we will stand up with a strong coalition. There's a lot going on, ladies and gentlemen, and we want to, of course, be in tune, be educated. We want to talk about it. We want to be actively involved, right, in what we know and believe. And we want to, of course, continue to work towards fighting and standing for the progress that we know we need to move forward. There's a lot going on, and I want to also talk about, as we are hearing more and more about these suspicious deaths of American Black people across the country. And the Legal Defense Fund has announced that they have written Congress and the United Nations bodies seeking investigations into this series of suspicious Black deaths and potential racial bias and whether state and local authorities adequately investigated them. Now, the Legal Defense Fund is calling for a congressional commission and also an independent examination, not really declaring that every death had the same cause, but as we were talking about, Nolan Wells and so many others, there's another story that I don't want us to rush into or rush through, But I want to be very precise about this because we're talking about people's lives and also how families have had to continue to grieve. And the Legal Defense Fund is calling for this congressional and international scrutiny of a growing number of suspicious deaths, right, of Black people that have been happening around the country. But the distinction, I feel like, is asking for an investigation. It's not the same as really declaring what happened. And so it's asking authorities really to establish what happened thoroughly, right, and transparently, and also independently. But as Black Americans have historically and historical reasons to really care deeply, I think, about whether suspicious deaths receive serious investigation. This country has a documented history of racial terror, right? Lynchings were sometimes ignored, deaths haven't been properly investigated, families ain't been given answers. That history doesn't really prove what happened in any individual contemporary case, but it absolutely explains why transparency matters, right? And that's the responsible position. It's not conspiracy or dismissal or the evidence or the investigation. It's transparency and accountability, right? And should this level of investigation depend on who died? Of course not. I feel like every family deserves to know, right, that authorities have treated the death of their loved one as worthy of serious examination as anyone else, right? As anyone else. And so here's why this national review, I feel, matters. I feel like on one case, it can be dismissed, right, as an anomaly, and in two cases, right, it can be called a coincidence. But if civil rights lawyers themselves believe that they're seeing this pattern, I feel like the responsible response really isn't to immediately declare that the pattern is real or to declare it is false or imaginary, right? I feel like Black deaths are more likely not even reported in most cases. It depends on, how things are coming into the light, right? It depends on how things are documented. It depends on who gets involved, right, from the onset. There's a lot going on with this. And so I feel like, we can't take this for granted or we can't take this lightly. And in this moment, as we're talking about it, as we're talking about marching, as we're talking about keeping it real, I feel like we, have to care very deeply about this as well. 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Let's go to Brother Jacob. Brother Jacob is listening to us from Philadelphia on WURD. Brother Jacob, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon. Brother Jacob? Line 2?
All right, hello. All right, now I hear you. All right, Sister Dominica. Hey, look, in Latino it would be Sister Dominica. You know what? It's good to hear you because when I hear you, I know I'm still getting the Sharpton intellect. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing lost right there. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good thing. But then, so peace be unto you and to the global listeners that you all have. I consider myself to be a baby boomer, okay? I came in, in that time. And to Brother Ray, now, you can't change people's hearts. It's not your, job even to do that. But what we can do, like the prophets of God always did, they just kept telling the truth and what it was. And then we got to pray on it and then get up off our knees and go to work, and we can't fail. And somebody was talking about, is marching relevant? Yes. And well, it shows you can show your presence. And that's why I prayed tomorrow. I told your father that I want it to be so big because this is Americans marching now. This is, you know how many labels that the people of America wear? And all over the globe, but they're American citizens paying taxes and everything. And I think that's what I pray it's going to be about. And I told your father that I pray it's so big that Donald Trump is going to have to rush the Truth Social and say that his inauguration thing was bigger than that, because he always going to do that, whatever. So that's what I pray we say, I mean. But, look at Sister Dominique, this stuff you're talking about, do you know that before Trump's leadership, the CIA, FBI, and everybody, they was giving reports on like terrorism, and they were saying the greatest threat came from inside America, and it was the white racist groups, right? And we're not surprised that, these incidents that keep happening, well, we ain't crazy. We already know that it's something up. I was a young musician traveling with Philadelphia International groups, and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes was one of the groups that I traveled with. And they had the tune "Wake Up, Everybody," right? Now, imagine this, Dominique. They done told people that it's better to stay asleep. Woke is bad. Are you kidding me, Dominique? They really think that the American people are going to fall for that. Only the ones that I pray for, the mega hat, I understand that they're, they need a little prayer and a little truth, and they got that. But again, they done wage war against us as black people. We see that. We had Black Wall Street in Tulsa. We had Rosewood. We did these things, and America knows what they did. It's the same disrespect to this Constitution because they, in their racism, hate black people and others, and this is what they'll go to the extent to do. But America sees this, and tomorrow I pray that America show America that we're waking up, and we ain't gonna stand. Popeye. I'm a baby boomer. It was a cartoon, Popeye. Your dad would know. And when he took a lot, he said before he opened up that can of spinach, he said, "I've taken all I could stand, and I can't stand no more." And then he would open up that can of spinach and start straightening things out. So God bless us. We want this thing to be big tomorrow, and we want God to and all our money is God bless America. And we know God don't bless no mess. So thank you.
And amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your call. And no, I think you're right. And I'm sitting here really just looking at the Lincoln Memorial, thinking about tomorrow, 63 years, this is the same Lincoln Memorial, but a different generation. We got different technology. Think about that. My dad talks about it all the time. Dr. King, organized marches and demonstrations and really worked to end segregation in the South and never had a cell phone, never had a laptop, right? Never had a fax machine, right? But they had determination and commitment, different politics, different challenges. But America is still wrestling with one fundamental question: who gets the full promise, right, of American democracy? That ballot matters, economic dignity matters, what happened in Gary, Indiana matters, whether a black family can trust that the unexplained death of their loved one will receive a serious investigation matters, It all matters. And so it's like, here we are. It's our turn, We got to live in this moment, but we also have to stand up and rise to the occasion of who we are and what we know we are called to do, right? It's up to us. 1-877-532-5797. It's Policy Thursday. We'll be back with Attorney Jennifer Jones-Austin, Reverend Sharpton, and you on the phone. If you want to join in on the conversation, call us at 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Breaking news. The issues, the stories.
That's why I said to deal with this DEI situation, you must be disciplined and do study, because unless you do structural change, we'll keep coming right back to this over and over again. I spoke Wednesday night at Yale University, and I told them students, some of those brightest students in the country, Yale, Harvard, I spoke at Yale, and told them there is a structural problem, which is why Trump and Vance and President Elon Musk, they can come in and put us backward because the structure was never corrected. They walk in the door and say NDI, because structurally they can make that stand. We've got to break the corporate world from doing it and then straighten out the structure of how this country is. Why we ought to be sending people to Congress is not sending them to Congress because they had the robocalls call your house, but they're committed to the structural change of this country. What Trump is successful on is playing on a weak structure, so he can make it go either way. It should not be so unclear that you can play the game either set away. It must be firm that you got to repair the damage done to the children of the slave and straighten out the structure that we are not 3/5 human. We are full human beings that built this country and never got paid. That's what reparations is. Where in history is this? He said we always go one step forward and two backward. Well, here we are now. The problem is not Trump. The problem is us. We are allowing ourselves to be lowered and our children to feel inferior because you don't have an I am somebody person. You got our artists calling our women bees. Our others calling us niggas. What happened to us? What happened to black and proud? What happened? I'm gonna vote. What happened? Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. What happened to us?
And I think that is extremely important about the funding. But I also want to add how they're changing what can be taught. You have states outright saying you can't teach black history and you can't teach certain other histories and the curriculum. You have this administration that is literally taking out exhibits from the Smithsonian. So we have not only an education problem in terms of resources, we have an education problem in terms of curriculum and what people are being taught. So I have one grandchild, 6-year-old. When he gets to high school, it may be just against the law for him to learn about certain parts of American history, which includes blacks. We want to talk about slavery. We want to talk about the good side of America. Well, what does that mean? That's not history. Everything was not good. And I think that that is the threat that we've got to fight, which is why we've got to fight in the courts and the streets, because they are literally changing the textbooks as we go. As they do that, they change the opportunities, because then the fight against affirmative action is not having access to these institutions and telling these institutions, this whole fight around DEI, which they did, started in Harvard with a black woman president. Started with them saying you can't teach diversity in an Ivy League school like Harvard. It didn't start in Little Rock at the high school. This fight, this time, was Harvard. And they went from there on. And I think that we've got to have the same resistance. If they could fight in the 50s, it ain't some people defense fund together and deal with the question from Little Rock in terms of desegregation, then we that are far more educated, far more economically secure personally, have no excuse in the age of what they did in Harvard not to be standing up back in this.
Voting rights.
Everyone look here.
Say it again, Miss Pearl.
Voting rights.
Voting rights. One more time, Miss Pearl.
Voting rights.
There we go.
Voting rights. Voting rights.
Voting rights.
Voting rights.
Voting rights.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we need it?
Now. Yesterday.
What do we want? Voting rights. When do we need it?
Now.
What do we want?
Voting rights.
When do we need it?
Now.
Such in itself, the millions to billions, give a sense of value. Our history is worthless. We're not a worthless people. We're not a people that are just some ghetto drugs. You know, sometimes in places that we were destined. And this one shows us that we are.
Sharpton in for the Reverend Sharpton is going to be joining us momentarily. We're taking your calls all over the country. You call us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. It's also Policy Thursday, and so we are joined by Attorney Jennifer Jones Austin, as we are every Thursday. It's always a pleasure. I know I don't have much time with you, my sister, but it's always a pleasure to join you and speak with you. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. Attorney Jennifer Jones Austin, welcome back to Keeping It Real.
Happy Thursday, and there's a part of me that wants to say happy birthday because I want to just keep celebrating you and all that you are. I know we're a few weeks beyond, but just you always put a smile on my face just when I think about who you are, how you show up in the world, how you move through the world, the differences that you're making in the lives of so many of us, and it's just always a joy when I get to spend a little time with you here on Keeping It Real. So, happy Thursday, and just happy ongoing birthday.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you, my sister. You know that we're in Washington, D.C., where we are here on the eve of the March on Washington, where on tomorrow we will be joined by thousands of people who will come to Washington, D.C. to stand with us to defend the vote. And I know that, you in your leadership capacity in many different ways have really helped to hone this moment, right, that we are standing together. I've been on Zoom calls all day yesterday with young people from different universities, Sister Jennifer, and different walks of life who are coming together, some for the very first time, right, to come to a march. And in this moment, to stand up, right, to elevate their voice, and who feel like their voice matters in this moment. I've been having the most interesting conversations, I feel. But in this moment, we've been spending a lot of time, talking about why we're marching, and I feel like if we're going to say defend the vote, Attorney Jennifer Jones-Austin, then we've got to keep it real. Because what exactly are we defending the vote from, right, in August of 2026? I feel like this isn't theoretical. I feel like there is a major legal and political fight, obviously, that's happening right now, over how American people even will vote in the November midterms. And we're less than 3 months away from that. And so while so many people are traveling to Washington to talk about protecting the ballot and courts and states and the White House, right, and the Postal Service that's fighting over the rules governing mail ballots right now, right? That's what's happening today, I feel like we've got to be about it in this moment. And I don't know how you feel on this Policy Thursday. As we know, we gather here every week for that. But I feel like with all that's happening, with what we're seeing with the mail-in voting, with what we're seeing with even the Legal Defense Fund that's starting to come in asking for investigation on what's happening on all of these deaths of Black Americans across the country. I mean, the correlation, isn't theoretical, right? We're here for a reason. No. So I feel like, you being one who has been steadfast in this leadership capacity in this moment can really speak truth to power to us, but also to really keep it real with us on what is going on and what we are really here to stand for and fight for, and what it looks like, right, come August 29th, come September 1st, come 6 months from now, what we need to do to be about it.
So, as you spoke, I felt like I was welling up with, like tears and just filled with emotion, in part because this day, August 28th, is like sacred. It's not only symbolic, but it's sacred in the lives of Black Americans and in America. As a day 63 years ago when, people whose voices were not being heard, said, I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to stand up for my community. I'm going to stand up for what I believe is right and what is decent when it comes to all human beings made and created by God, being seen and heard and being valued, and their worth being, considered as equal to white Americans. People showed up. And so it's symbolic that we come again this go-round, but it's more than symbolic, because what we learned 63 years ago is that our presence moves people. It was because of the 1963 March on Washington that we achieved the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then it was because Martin Luther King Jr. and others took to the streets in 64 and 65, we got the Voting Rights Act. So in this moment, let me tell you, even if it was just symbolic, it would be important for me, mean everything for me and for my family who are coming. They're on their way to be here because we have to show that we're not just laying down. Harriet Tubman is attributed, this term, this line is attributed to her. It's questionable about whether she said it, but the sentiment is there. She said that they say that she said when asked how many enslaved persons did you help free, that she said, I freed hundreds, but I could have freed thousands more if they only knew that they were slaves.
Yes.
And and the significance of that in this moment is, if you do not understand that your vote is everything and your standing up means so much. They are counting on us to sit back. They're counting on us to say being present and being heard doesn't make a difference. They're counting on us to roll over when just down the street from the Lincoln Memorial, the Supreme Court has now gone along with a frivolous executive order seeking to take away our ballots. Couple that with restricted voting. They're counting on us to not understand it, that voting does make a difference. Yeah, because voting is what allows us to get in place to people who are maybe going to push back on wages that don't really work for us. Push back on all these changes that are coming down at the courts level, judiciary at the district, the circuit, and the federal level Supreme Court. It is our vote when we put people in place who are going to say, not today. Not today. But also, it's our vote that's going to make sure that those people we send to Congress do what need be done. So if you don't think that your vote matters, and if you don't come down here and say, I'm one of these people who makes the connection between voting and education, voting and my job, my freedom, my Social Security, my health care, if you don't think it's necessary for you to say, you know what? Like, even if I'm but one of 20,000, I was still one of the 20,000. If you don't think that's necessary, then I mean this, and I don't mean to harm or make people feel bad, but do you fall into that category of the people that Harriet Tubman, they say, was talking about, who doesn't understand that, your freedom is at risk right now? You are entrapped in the way that this government wants you to be entrapped if you don't stand up. That's how I feel right now.
And, this administration, Sister Jennifer, is arguing, obviously, that, these measures with the mail-in voting and all these restrictions, are about election security, right, and ensuring that only eligible citizens, right, vote. I mean, that's their argument, and we should obviously tell, what both sides are saying, but states and voting rights organizations, are saying, wait a minute, this Constitution gives states and Congress and, major authority over elections, and they argue that a president can't simply rewrite, right, election procedures through executive action. They also warn, right, that making these major changes this close to an election could really create confusion and also potentially prevent eligible voters from actually casting their ballot successfully. So now you've got this basic policy question, right? Where does this election security end and voter restriction actually begin? I think that that's also worth talking about.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the deal, and I'm just going to speak right now in this moment, to the mail-in voting and what is happening here. We'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Come back to that. Reverend Sharpton, Jennifer, awesome. Reverend Sharpton is going to be joining us momentarily, but you can join in on the conversation. Call us at 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Keep it real.
Who is this 33-year-old preacher without a church?
A number of black New Yorkers as well. He is little more than a pudgy exhibitionist who can be counted on to show up, bullhorn in hand, at every racial incident.
I often quote Mark Twain saying, the two most important moments in life is the moment you are born and the moment you find out why you were born. I had a very troubling conversation the other day that prompted me to do this little video. Young man that I've known a while came to me, and he was crushed. I mean, really crushed, because people were criticizing his work. He's in the ministry, but he's also an actor. And he said he couldn't understand why people were jumping all over, criticizing him, trying to find scandalous and derogatory things about him. And I told him, I said, you know, you very young. You don't know the road I've traveled. They call me everything but a child of God.
A blabbermouth, a loudmouth, too flamboyant, an agitator, a racist,
and I had to learn.
Yeah, right.
I was not defined by how others saw me. I was defined by how I saw myself and whether I was being true to myself. Some of you watching this don't like me. And it doesn't matter as long as I know what I'm doing. And I like me for being real. So I'm doing this video to say to you, whoever you are, and whatever you do, you may not be in ministry or social justice, none of this stuff, but don't live your life worried about opposition or people that don't like you. You can turn that around. Use me as an example. The same people that call me a scam artist, a con artist, a sellout, or racial hustler and all, I kept going. And the people I respected started respecting and publicly embracing my work.
When Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had this to say about Al Sharpton.
A leader who has protested injustice with a passionate, unrelenting commitment to nonviolent action in the spirit and tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. And I am talking about your leader, our leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
The other thing that hasn't changed is the National Action Network's commitment to fight injustice and inequality here in New York City and across America. And that's not only a testament to Reverend Sharpton, it's a testament to all of you who are here tonight.
First and foremost, to Reverend Sharpton. I saw him when he first came on the scene, and I have marveled at his tenacity, at the development of his intellect, and his devotion to our movement, and much he has contributed to the world we are experiencing. I am honored, and I must say that when I had my debate with Dr. King on the issue of the church and religion, he didn't warn me that after his departure, his space would be filled by another preacher, and that preacher would be Al Sharpton.
All you want in life is people that matter to you to say you did all right. And more important, that you can look in the mirror and say you did all right.
Thank you, Rev. Thanks for that introduction. Look, we've known each other for a long time. I'm grateful not only for your leadership and partnership, but quite frankly, more importantly, for your friendship. And thanks to all of you, members of our nation's most important civil rights organization.
You have been, over all of your years, such an extraordinary leader. You are a voice of truth, a voice of conscience, a voice of practicality around what we must address and what we can do. And I thank you so much for your friendship.
I remember that most of the youth around Al's age, he was about 12, wanted to be like Connie Hawkins, a great basketball player, legend, or Earl the Pearl, or Clyde Frazier. Al wanted to be like Adam Powell, a powerful preacher with a social justice gospel. He was very close to, at that time, to Reverend William Augustus Jones, powerful preacher and social justice advocate, and Reverend Gardner Taylor State right down the street, and Bishop Washington, whose church he came from, and Reverend Sandy Ray. He wanted to be like these giant preachers. He wanted them to have the edge, however, of the King's social justice dimension. He wanted to be like them, now he's one of them. Perhaps taller than most of them because of the risks he has taken and the reward God has given him with his gift. I remember so well that I first escorted him to jail. He was around 13 years old with the jail fighting the ANP. He was in the lineage of our struggle. He grew up in it. We didn't just see him on TV one night. He didn't happen. He came bottom up, not top down.
is such a pleasure to be here with Reverend Sharpton and this entire congregation on Juneteenth weekend to not only celebrate freedom, but recognize the work that is still to be done to ensure that that freedom is within the grasp of each and every New Yorker who has helped to build this city. Thank you for having me as always.
Is a house of justice.
Dominique Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton's eldest daughter, sitting in for the Rev with Attorney Jennifer Jones Austin, and we're taking your calls. You can join in on the conversation. Call us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Reverend Sharpton is in the house. We are actually coming to you live from Washington, D.C., where we are here on the eve of the March on Washington, where on tomorrow we will be joining many people here in Washington, D.C. Leaders from all over the country will convene with organizations in labor, education, and healthcare, and so many other groups will be joining us to stand up to defend the vote. And I was talking with Attorney Jennifer Jones Austin before the break about some of these things that we are dealing with as it relates to voting, and people are asking, well, why is it so serious? Why are y'all talking about this stuff now? Well, we're not talking about a tiny group of people. Nearly 100 million mail ballots, Sister Jennifer, were handled by the Postal Service during the 2024 election. 100 million, okay? 100 million. That is not something that we are taking or should be taken lightly, right? This is a serious matter. It's a serious issue. And if we're talking about, and Sister Jennifer Jones Austin is going to be calling back. She got disconnected, so we're trying to get her back on the phone with us. But if we're talking about 100 million people, and we're talking about how in any given moment, wherever we are in the country, we can, have some type of issue as it relates to voting, as it relates to how we are actually being able to cast our vote, cast our ballot. And when we're talking about, well, it's time to vote again, and who we going to vote for, and who's speaking to our issues, what candidates are speaking to us, and what candidates are going to help us get out of all of this stuff that we find, ourselves dealing with today, right, because of what happened and how we cast our vote, some of us, in 2024, right? But I think about, 100 million people who cast their votes via mail-in ballot and how that's now being challenged. That's not a small number. It's significant, pretty significant. And we've got to really understand the crucialness of what we're dealing with across the country and how important of a threat this is to our democracy. And so we want to hear from you, obviously, and Reverend Sharpton is going to be joining us. He's already hit the ground running in Washington, D.C. We've got Attorney Jennifer Jones Austin on with us as it's Policy Thursday.
but want to hear from you. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk with Percy. Percy's listening to us from Detroit. Percy, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Percy.
Yes. How you? Yeah. Okay.
On the air.
Yeah. You know what? I'm out here door knocking, campaigning for people to get out here and go vote. You know,
my brother.
And I just gave a flyer with somebody, one of these home care workers that are in our state that we organize, and so they can be civically aware of who they need to be voting for that's putting funding in the health care budget and who's not, you know.
All right.
So, yeah, but look, we got a bus. In fact, I probably got about 4 more houses I'm going to go to. Then I got to go and get with my UAW brothers because LaShawn English, our regional director, sponsored a bus for our UAW workers. We're going to be pulling off at 7 o'clock this afternoon, heading to Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir.
In the March.
That's
in
right.
the March. You know?
All right.
So, and there's stress also, you know, this is Emmett Till. This is the day that Emmett Till got killed, right? And this is kind of remembrance of what happened then that brought us together. But also, you know, is Jennifer Austin on? I'm hoping she could hear. I got a little more meat I want to put on the bone when it comes to diversity, equality, and inclusion. What I ask to be, you know, with the fact that we are putting into the system. Our money comes from every nationality that goes into the system, right? That funds our infrastructure, that funds our school, and that funds our employment. For me, the ask should be more on, well, the ask ought to be also on the fact if we are putting in the system, we should have that type of employment and opportunity in the system too. You know, and that's giving us more of a justification of seriously saying that we're supposed to be in the table when opportunity comes, that we invest from what we put in the system. And it should be, that's an ask that we're saying, if we're putting into the system, we ought to be at the table, also being able to get the employment and the opportunities in the job with how we're funding the system as a nationality.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. We're with you.
Yeah. So, you know, that's you know, kind of the conversation that I'm pushing while I'm seriously saying that, you know, it shouldn't just be all the grand old boys getting all the contracts and nobody else is getting the contracts and they unemploying us, and, you know, it should just be that should be the opportunity. And then when I'm encouraging people why to get out and vote, I'm telling them to get out and vote because this is where your funding that you decide of who you put in office is who's going to support you to lift you up or who's going to oppress you and pull you down. And we distinctly have elected officials out here, and it's obvious right now what's going on in D.C. They will take funding away from your community and take funding from your schools. You know, and if you don't put the right people in office, this is why you got to participate with this so you can seriously put the right folks in office that's going to give you a return of the funds that you're putting into the system. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about, funding and just being respected and being taken care of because you're a person, and we should be having elected officials that's going to take care of us because we should be respected and loved and not harmed and oppressed.
Right. That's right. Thank you so much for that, brother. No, go ahead.
We got T-shirts. We're going to be wearing red T-shirts with a bus load. We got a full bus. We got over 55 members that's going to be on that bus, and we're going to be walking with y'all with red T-shirts on from the UAW.
That's all right. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and seeing your contingency. Thank you for elevating your voice and doing the work and getting into the action. That's what it's about. That is what it's about. Thank you so much for your call, and we look forward to welcoming you, to seeing you tomorrow in Washington, D.C. 100 million mail ballots, y'all. 100 million. Think about that. And so I was saying this earlier, but, you know, when you change that infrastructure surrounding mail voting, and I know Sister Jennifer Jones Austin is trying to join us, get back in with us. But when you think about that, you are potentially affecting millions and millions of American people. I'm talking about seniors. We're talking about people with disabilities. We're talking about military families, people who work, long hours, people who are traveling. We're talking about a large people who are living in rural communities where, they're not in close proximity to a voting booth or voting, to a voting facility, and people who simply use a voting method legally available to them in their state, right? And so I really want us to be careful here because election security matters. Of course it matters, right? We should want accurate voter rolls. So that's not what we're talking about here. We should want secure elections. That's not what we're talking about here. We should want Americans to trust election results. That's not what we're talking about here. But security and I feel accessibility don't have to be enemies. I feel like, we should be capable of doing both. And I feel like the question is, whether these particular policies accomplish that or really create additional barriers, if you think about it, right? I mean, that's what the courts are now being asked to decide. And I think that's why tomorrow's march is simply just not happening in a vacuum. Think about the timing. Think about how we're approaching this national election. Think about how states are preparing ballots. Think about how election administrators, right, are preparing systems. Voters are trying to understand these rules, not create confusion and not create other problems. I hear the music playing. We're going to take this break. We'll be right back with more of you on the phones, 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Keeping It Real.
Thank you for joining us for Weekdays Live with Reverend Al Sharpton. Take the time to share this broadcast right now. Tell your friends it's time to keep it real with Reverend Al. Comment your questions now in the chat or call Reverend Al Sharpton directly on air at 877-532-5797. Now stay tuned for Reverend Al.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton. As you watch the broadcast, support National Action Network. Go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net and be involved. You can join, take your membership right online, www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Getting ready to start the program, but we need you to be part of the movement. Marching doesn't solve a problem. Marching exposes a problem. But if somebody don't expose the problem, then nobody gonna solve a problem that you haven't forced them to deal with.
In 1963, the March on Washington was held, and there was a legislative agenda, passed the Civil Rights Bill. Today, we have a new generation that is coming forward. Younger people, men and women, coming forward to take the torch and run with it.
How you doing, sir? All right.
It's Claudette Williamson from Atlanta, Georgia. And the last time I saw Reverend Sharpton was in New York City at Sylvia's. And my sister and I pretended that we needed to go to the bathroom so we could go in and see him and say hi for distance. I'm okay. You look great. My name's New York City with Sylvia's.
Oh.
My sister told our house, can I get a so we can see? Wave at you, and today I. Lisa? Yes. Oh, the picture. We're her children. Thank you all.
Reverend, it's really great to meet you. Dad, were you in? It's an honor to meet you. Okay, come take a second.
Brother Sharpton,
Thank you.
meet you back here right quick while you more minister. One more, please.
My name is
Silly pose. How y'all doing? Oh my God. How you doing? Oh, come on, man. I gotta get a photo. All right. Appreciate you, man. Have a good one, man.
It is really a intersection of both emotions, because when I was 11 or 12 years old, so I watched the news a lot and I became enthralled with the image of Adam Clayton Powell. I was around 11 and I convinced my mother to let me come up to this church to see Adam Clayton Powell. And in those days, people in Brooklyn used to say it's dangerous to go to Harlem. And folk in Harlem say it's dangerous to go to Brooklyn. Now, to 135th Street, and I sat right back there, and Adam Clayton Powell walked down this platform. And I remember after the church, in those days, Johnson, the pastor's study was right inside with the plexiglass, and I knocked on the door and I told the secretary I wanted to meet Reverend Powell. She looked down this little 11-year-old boy. She said, "Really?" She said, "Who did I say?" I said, "Reverend Al Sharpton."
That call means dignity. Means we're gonna walk side by side with you, or through you. We're gonna be with dignity and integrity. We don't want any more than you have, and we're not gonna accept any less than you have. That's my thought.
Look at everything. I went a couple of nights to go to the Knicks game. They lost. Last night I said, I'm not even going down there. I'm going to go to bed. I got to find a Hampton on Chicago. And by halftime I said,
Man, they ain't gonna win this year. They down 29 points. And somebody here today, you've been down. They counted you out. People say there's no way you come back. But I come to tell you, don't quit. For there's another half to play. And God will take you and let you win when the odds are against you. I know they talk about you, but preach anyhow. I know sometimes the pews are empty, but preach anyhow. And when you get up almost where you could win, I looked at it last night and Brunson took the shot. It looked like it was going in to win the game, but the shot hit the rim and all hope was gone. But then an African named Boyd OG just stretched through the crowd and he kicked in the winning shot. If you hold on, God will tip your win.
Oh, Sharpton.
Thank you. I'm Dominique Sharpton, eldest. You live from Washington, D.C., where we are here convening on the eve of the March on Washington, where we will be joining thousands of people. I'm getting text messages from buses and people who have left various cities, from further cities that takes a little longer to get to Washington, D.C., but they are on their way to Washington, D.C., as we will gather on tomorrow at the Lincoln Memorial. The program starts at 9 o'clock a.m. Buses are coming in as early as 8, 7, 6. But we'll start the program live at 9 a.m. from the Lincoln Memorial. And then we're going to march. We are going to march. We're going to march. We're going to march all up and down this city as we are standing to defend the vote. We have a lot that we are, of course, commemorating from the 1963 march, and there's so much that we can still hold at great value that we've learned from the organizing and mobilizing and the activity that took place from the 1963, as they call it, the original March on Washington. But we continue to come to Washington, D.C., as we know that our voice matters. We know that our activity matters. We know that our mobilization and organization matters. And so from all across the country, we have those who are committed to being called on the roll, who are committed to having their name jotted down in the history books as we remember this moment that will be remembered and be talked about and be documented generations from now when they ask, well, what happened when they were talking about rolling back provisions of the Voting Rights Act, when they were talking about rolling back resources that provided adequate education and adequate tools for students to learn adequately in their community, when they talk about what happened when millions of people lost access to quality health care, and how the prices of gas and the prices of prescription drugs have gone astronomically through the roof. Where were you? Where was great-granddad? Where was grandma? Where was great-great-auntie when all of this was happening? I don't know about you, but I want to be on that roll. I want them to say Dominique Sharpton stood up with the coalition of activists and leaders from all over the country to stand up to defend the rights that we so vehemently fought to progress. I want them to call my name and jot my name down on the roll as I was there. I was involved. I was committed. I was active in the fight for justice and equality. And I want you to also understand that in this moment,
as you also define what does defend the vote mean to you, right? Does it mean protecting the ballot access? Does it mean strengthening election security that we talked about? Does it mean both? And even a harder question, do you trust America's election system? Because if the answer is no, I want to know why, okay? I want to know what this has on you, how it affects you, how it affects your well-being, your family. You're right. We're taking your calls all over the country, 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797, and we will be joined as Reverend Sharpton is on the ground in Washington, D.C., and Jennifer Jones-Austin as she joins us every Thursday for Policy Thursday. We know that it's the voices of our people, and in this moment, great leaders, okay? Great leaders are going to be involved in great activity. And so we definitely want to keep, obviously, Reverend Sharpton in our prayers as he continues this work. But all of us, as we are traveling to do this work, as we are traveling to elevate our voice, as we're traveling to really strengthen the coalition from wherever we're coming from, we know that this moment is very valuable to the future generations of our struggle and for our people. And so we come in this moment not to only commemorate, but to elevate and to mobilize and to organize and to make that commitment that we too are going to stand in the gap. We over the country, there are young people that are coming to Washington, D.C., who understand the value of their voice in this moment, who understand, that young people are the future. And we've got to include them and involve them, because this all will depend on them, on how they carry it forward. All of the things that we're working and fighting for. And this one interests me because, if tomorrow is supposed to be about the future of the movement, we have to talk about the generation that's actually going to inherit it, right? The young people. There was a reporting even today that was raising an interesting question about tomorrow's march. And it said, can a civil rights mobilization built around voting rights connect with younger Black Americans whose immediate concerns may be much more economic? I was talking with Ray earlier about this. And I think that that's a very legitimate question because, we can't keep saying, why aren't young people showing up? We know that they're showing up. We know that they're here. They're involved, But we have to also ask, have we given them something that speaks to the lives that they're actually living? And I don't like it when people talk about young voters like they're children who need a lecture. You better vote. You don't know what people sacrifice. You young people don't understand. Okay, they should understand the history, absolutely. But after you've finished telling a 23-year-old, right, that people die for their right to vote, that 23-year-old may turn around and say, okay, but I have a college degree, right, and I can't find a job that lets me afford an apartment. Now what? They're worried about rent and student debt and jobs and health care, whether they'll ever own a house, whether Social Security will exist for them, whether they'll make more money than their parents, right? And they're watching politicians literally fight every day while their own lives still feel economically uncertain. That's what we're dealing with today. And so maybe disengagement isn't always apathy, right? Sometimes it's disillusionment. There is a difference. And here's where I think also that civil rights organizations have work to do too, because we have to translate this. Don't simply tell a young person voting rights matter. We have to show them your vote affects who determines your rent policy. Your vote affects minimum wage. It affects reproductive policy, public education, right? Student loan policy, criminal justice, transportation, you name it. Your vote affects whether your community gets resources. Your vote affects who becomes judges. Your vote affects the people who are making decisions about AI, right? And the jobs that may or may not exist 10 years from now. And I think that's very different. That's what connecting democracy to life is, right? Because if politics feels like something happening on cable news between politicians who are just screaming at one another, then why would a 21-year-old feel connected to it? Why would they? And I'm going to say something else. Intergenerational movements require intergenerational respect, okay? Young people have to respect what came before them, but also the older generations also have to respect the fact that younger people may organize differently, and that's okay. That's okay. They may communicate differently. They may distrust institutions differently. They may identify leaders differently. They may look different to them. Okay, their movements may begin on TikTok or Instagram instead of in a church basement. That's okay, but they can't forget that. They have to be connected to that church basement, or we are not going, we're going to miss it. We're going to miss a step somewhere. And so I think that doesn't automatically make their activism less legitimate. It actually instills that they can continue the fight and continue in doing the work. And every generation of young activists irritated the generation before it. I've heard it. I've heard it all so well before. And so here we are. We've got to continue the fight, especially younger listeners right now, you know, who want to call in. Obviously, we're hearing from so many young people who are elevating and raising to the occasion as we will come together in so many numbers on tomorrow in Washington, D.C. But we're taking your calls, 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. I don't know if Sister Jennifer Jones-Austin is back with us. She's not. She got to holler. But we got a lot of folks on the phone, and I want to get to them. And something else before Attorney Jones comes back to us, as we were talking about young people. And certainly, y'all know I'm a mother, and I got a 7-year-old. And every day I am more enthralled. And it's scary, right? It's like, oh, Lord, I got to have the conversation about this. I got to have a conversation with him about, growing up being a black boy in America. I got to have a conversation with him about, technology. And I got to have it's so many things that we are now having to confront, right, that we, can't tap into from generations before, what our grandmothers taught us and what our great-grandmothers, passed down to us. So obviously the conversations grow and elevate and progress as, we continue to move forward through life, right? And so I am also often confronted with that. It's like, kids say the darndest things that I'm often confronted with, the fact that my 7-year-old is literally able to knowing how to use ChatGPT and knowing how to tap into AI to ask questions and to get resources and to get information. That is scary. It's interesting, but it's also scary. And so we're dealing with that, And so I think that, and especially in the question of where the young people are and the fact that we want them to show up, we've got to, of course, be about the generation that ushered us here, the generation that came before us, that fought for making sure that all of the liberties that we have today, are protected. And so that's what we're doing in this moment. And whether we're talking about, John Lewis, or we're talking about what Reverend Al's doing today, or we're talking about what Tyleek McMillan will do tomorrow, we know that we have to continue the legacy and we have to work on the continuity of leadership and the continuity of how we will continue to protect our rights moving to the next generation. 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharp. We'll be right back.
been there since festival, since 1995. I came that year with my mentor, and we spoke. Well, he died in February this year, but I want to continue what he taught us, because even when times look bad, even when they look dark, I remember what my mentor taught me, Reverend Jesse Jackson. He said, keep hope alive. Even if you can't figure it out, keep hope alive. Even if it doesn't look like you can make it, keep hope alive. In memory of Jesse Jackson, say that with me tonight. Let him know on July 4th from New Orleans, keep hope alive. 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 Thank you, God.
It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. Suffering breeds character. Character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not disappoint. You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but just know that you're qualified and you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. On tomorrow night and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much. I love you very much.
Tried to turn it into a nightmare. We come to Wall Street rather than Washington this year to let them know you can try to turn back the clock, but you can't turn back time. We gonna keep the dream alive on Wall Street. The only thing that will matter 2 minutes after you gone is what you did for more than yourself. Think about this. Think about if today is your last day. If this is your last service, what can they say about me? And if you're not satisfied with your own answer, you should leave here today working on yourself and building on what you need to build. Because God is here. He's available to you if you but use what He's giving you to be more than self-indulgent. Now, I know many of us come with reasons we won't step out. But I come to tell you that's why God is here. God takes the ones that are the least likely and gets the most done. As I have seen in my life, people that were the unexpected and rejected are the ones that end up the greatest. So don't let whatever mistakes or whatever things that may be in your past hold you back. God is not trapped in your past. God is there for your future. And He's there that every day you wake up, was a divine decision he made to give you another opportunity to serve.
I remember I was 12 years old. I was a boy preacher in the Church of God in Christ. Bishop Shear knew my bishop, Bishop Washington. Bishop Washington, my mother was concerned I was getting into politics. They brought us to Reverend William Jones. His daughter's traveling with us. And Reverend Jones introduced me to Jesse Jackson. I became his youth director in New York at 13. I liked Reverend Jackson because he was a little hipper than the older preachers. He was 27, I was 13 by the time I became youth director. So he was like a father figure to me. When I got about 40, he said, quit calling me father, call me big brother. We went to the car center, and James Meeks and Jesse Jr. and I had dinner with him that night. And that's where he said to Al, Meeks, Jesse Jr., y'all are my disciples. And we said, disciples? And for years we joked each other. I'd come in the room and Junior say, here's disciple number one. But discipleship meant you carried forth the vision. The next day, he took me on the ferry to Goree Island, Mrs. Jackson. On Goree Island, he showed me where the slave camps were. And I will never forget, he said, Al, you see what that artifact is? I said, what's that? He said, they call it the door of no return. When you go through that door, you either made it to America to slavery, or you died in the Atlantic. The door of no return. But I talked to him about 3 years ago, and I reminded him, I said, remember when you brought me to the door of no return? He said, yeah. I said, well, we did return. We returned the President of the United States, Barack Obama. We returned the Vice President, Kamala Harris. We returned with businessmen. They thought they sent us as slaves. We came back as global liberators. The problem is that too many of us did not join the movements that sponsored us. And there was a breakout in 2024 called Negro Amnesia, where you forgot where you came from and forgot how you got where you got. Therefore, they're trying to take back everything you had. Marching doesn't solve a problem. Marching exposes a problem. But if somebody don't expose the problem, then nobody gonna solve a problem that you haven't forced them to deal with.
In 1963, the March on Washington was held, and there was a legislative agenda, passed the Civil Rights Bill. Today, we have a new generation that is coming forward. Younger people, men and women, coming forward to take the torch and run with it.
Keeping it real. Dominique here sitting in for Reverend Sharpton, taking your calls, 1-877-532-5797. We got a lot of folks holding on, so I want to get right back into it and want to also iterate thank you to Evangelist Ramsey, who has been steadfast in making sure to give us updates as they've been leading and continuing on the demonstrations to keep DEI alive against diversity, equity, and inclusion, to keep it alive, to keep it elevated, to keep the pressure on. and they have been demonstrating in front of Bill Ackman's office in New York City for 135 weeks. And we have to obviously give credit where credit is due. But for people to demonstrate, remember how long the Montgomery bus boycott was, for people to commit to demonstrate week after week, 135 weeks, chanting when DEI is under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. All of that goes to explaining and understanding that this is not a sprint. This fight is not something that we are going to jump into the ring and have a scuffle and jump out. This is a marathon race. This is something that if we are committed and active and engaged and we committed and we're continuing to do the work, we know that we are going to see the fruits of our labor developed within the next generation of all over the country. Folks are coming in to Washington, D.C. I just got off the phone with Cheryl Huff from Tennessee. So we are working, mobilizing, and organizing. I was going to my brother, Disco Brian. I saw you holding on, listening to us from Philadelphia on WURD. Wanted to elevate and get you into this conversation because we're here in this moment, Disco Brian. We're keeping it real.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Sister Dominique, my sacred angelic wife, will not be joining me. She's working tomorrow, so I'll be solo. And I had 2 signs planned out. I was going to do a reject hate sign with a picture of some hate mongers, and I want to thank Senator John Ossoff on that account for joining Leader Jeffries today in, quote, unreservedly rejecting one popular hate monger's comments about Jewish support for Israel, and I'm not going to mention that hate monger's name. I am still waiting for all the white male Gentile Democratic leaders to join their black, Jewish, and female colleagues, since so far the only Democratic leaders who've denounced that hate monger have been black, Jewish, and female Democrats. So Sheldon Whitehouse, Chris Coons, Mark Kelly, Chris Murphy, Chris Van Hollen, where y'all at? I know, probably not interested in finding out what's going on the radio show of the civil rights leader, but maybe at least pretend to pay attention here. But you know what, Dominique? I decided for the march, I'm going to take your dad's advice. I'm not going to bring a sign that gives more oxygen to a hater. Instead, the only sign I'm bringing is one of positivity. On the front, it's that iconic pic of Whitney receiving a Grammy from Dolly Parton for "I Will Always Love You" with one message underneath. It says, "Spread love." And on the back, it's another iconic pic of Sly Stone, Everyday People, Hot Fun in the Summertime, Sly Stone, wearing that necklace he always wore with the Star of David on it. And that side says Black-Jewish Alliance equals voting rights. Since, you know, Dominique, I was reflecting and I realized Sly was wearing that Star of David his whole career right through 1971 when certain revolutionists were trying to shatter the sacred alliance between Black and Jewish Americans that actually created the Voting Rights Act. So I'm hoping that maybe some of the speakers will see it from the stage and respect that very important lineage of the civil rights movement. And again, I am a white Gentile who loves and whose soul was saved by Black music and whose life was saved by a Jewish woman. So I'm all about rebuilding that sacred bond that your sister Ashley Laverne Jackson has been doing all over the world. And I just thank you so much for having me on, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow.
I can't wait to see you either. Thank you so much, Disco Brian, for always elevating your voice and speaking where it matters most. Thank you so much for your call. And thank you for keeping it real, as always. We are here in Washington, D.C., and I am on the brink. Oh, we're going to go take another break. But we still got folks that are holding on to get your comments in. We're going to get to you. We'll be back with more Keeping It Real, y'all. We'll be right back.
Marching doesn't solve a problem. Marching exposes a problem. But if somebody don't expose the problem, then nobody gonna solve a problem that you haven't forced them to deal with.
In 1963, the March on Washington was held, and there was a legislative agenda, passed the Civil Rights Bill. Today, we have a new generation that is coming forward. Younger people, men and women, coming forward to take the torch and run with it.
Voting rights.
Everyone look here.
Say it again, Ms. Pearl.
Voting rights.
Voting rights. One more time, Ms. Pearl.
Voting rights.
There we go.
Voting rights. Voting rights.
Voting rights.
Voting rights.
Voting rights.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we need it?
Now. Yesterday.
What do we want?
Voting rights.
When do we need it?
Now.
What do we want?
Voting rights.
When do we need it?
Now.
Many people cannot focus because they have not really come to terms with their calling and life purpose. In order to focus, you must also be clear on what you're focusing on. So if you're not clear on your purpose, if you're not clear on your life's calling, then focus on seeking that. Because if you just read the ways and roads you traveled that you didn't even choose, that were sort of just laid out for you by God, in that it's telling you, speaking to you about what your purpose is and what you were born to do and be. I learned the things that I didn't plan had to be planned by God, and God's plan was directed toward God's purpose in my life. And I focus on that. Not focus on what others do, not focus on how well they're doing or bad they're doing, but focus on whether I'm in line and aligned with what I'm supposed to be about. And in order to move straight ahead, you have to be focused on the path you're running on. I see I'm in today's New York Times word puzzle, and they're asking what is Al Sharpton's title for short. It's Rev. I didn't know everybody knew that. But the people in the New York Times, they didn't call me Rev. They should call me Reverend. No.
Keep the dream alive on Wall Street. This is a house of justice.
Keeping it real. Dominique Sharpton here, taking your calls on Keeping It Real. Let's get back into it. I know we got a lot of folks holding on that want to chime in on the conversation today. Let's go right back in. Let's speak to David on line 2, who's listening to us from Savannah, Georgia. David, you're Keeping It Real. Good afternoon. David? Hello.
Oh, there we are.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Thanks, Dominique. Yeah, I'm in San Francisco, though, other side of the world. Or other side of the
sorry about that. We got Savannah up here on the board, but I hear you from San Francisco. That's quite a difference.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Well, I was interested in the march and whether or not it was going to be live streamed or if you had, simultaneous other cities going to take part in it. And the screener didn't think that there were other cities, but you're probably going to do a live stream of it, right?
Oh, we're definitely going to be streaming it. I know that C-SPAN is going to be covering it, so you got a television, want to tune in to C-SPAN, but also live on our website as we do all things, nationalactionnetwork.net. You can come to that place and you can watch the rally and the march.
Tune in, yeah. Yeah, always a good idea because there's usually so many inspiring signs. And as a matter of fact, let's see, I've forgotten the previous caller that was talking about the Black-Jewish Alliance. A lot of people don't realize it, but the Klan, they wouldn't let Jews vote in certain counties. Mississippi was pretty awful. Alabama, sections of Georgia, they were pretty danged awful. And women would have trouble getting the vote. They were, bigots are bigots, and it's even worse than bigots. Sometimes it's a company store. One town is run by the mill or run by a certain industry, and nobody can get anything done. You'll be, frozen out of town. Nobody will trade with you. Nobody will give you a job. They'll try to run you out of town before they kill you. And that Black-Jewish Alliance, the reason why the Voting Rights Act was put together was because of these old boys. And, of course, Trump is back to the same old scams. So, I'd wrap up, though. I'd wrap up, though, as you were talking about the voting rights. If you think about it, 250 years ago, the average person didn't even have the right to vote. And the ability to run our own lives, and that we didn't need no stinking king to tell us what to do. We can run our own lives, thank you, and we can vote to spend our money in a certain way. We can all band together to have libraries and schools and sewer systems and fresh water systems and whatnot. That's what it's all about. And here we have a Penthouse Boy, and Penthouse Boy is, I was just reading a piece yesterday that Penthouse Boy has basically cut the funding for vaccines. So measles is going around really badly right now, and Donald Trump has cut the budget for measles vaccinations, and I think he took it down from 19 vaccinations to 11 are going to be paid for. And COVID is actually spreading around right now again, too. And both measles and COVID are spread by breath, by air. And measles is apparently even worse than COVID for being able to catch it. So the guy is pretty clearly trying to get us killed. And then he's going to say that we can't even use our own money to put together protection, that we, the people, can't protect ourselves with our taxes, and that we have to let his old bigots to decide who's going to live or die. So, this Voting Rights Act is a very important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You said a lot there, and thank you for your call. And that's what I want to get at, because you're so on point with that, and I feel like, even with the march tomorrow, and we're talking about, what happens the day after, right? What happens on August 29th? What happens when we have to really look at, where our liberties are and what we really, really need to accomplish, right? In the next coming days, months, years. The movements, they love big days, right? So the stage, the crowd, the signs, the speeches, like you were talking about, all the pictures, but then what happens after that? Everybody gets on their bus and posts a picture saying I was there, and then goes home and nothing changes, right? So we've commemorated something, but we didn't build something. And so I think that in this moment we have to focus on building aspects of not only our possibilities, but of our progress. Thank you so much for your call. Thank you for keeping it real, David. Let's go to Al. Al is listening to us from Atlanta on WAOK. Al, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I don't like to complain about what we don't have, but I'd like to talk about what we can probably do to increase our situation or make it better. Right here in Georgia, about 30 years ago, there was a black family that owned 30 acres of land, and a company wanted it, and they offered them $30,000 for it. They took the deal and didn't find out till afterward that there was $1 billion worth of white clay underneath the soil. So they spent some time in court trying to change the deal, but it was too late. But what I'm saying is we should know what we do have and not focus on what we don't have. And one of the things you can do is everybody who owns land, if you got any kind of land, have it surveyed, have somebody look underneath it and find out what's there. You might be sitting on top of gold mine or silver mine or whatever. And then the second thing is we need to support, the better support to those who are fighting for us, the SCLC, Black College Fund, your church. Everybody that's doing something for Black America, we should give them better support. If anything, if you can't do anything else, send every black country, every organization that's working for us, send them an extra $1, just $1, just to tell them, I'm with you, I love you, we're in this fight together. And you'd be surprised at how much that can help them and what it can do for you. And the last thing, what we need to do is start our own detective agency. Because if you depending on the FBI and the good old boy network to do something for you, they're gonna drag their feet. So what we should do is hire some detectives, probably from another country if necessary, and have them investigate these crimes against us and these violence against Black families, Black people, and find out the truth about it. If we're in the wrong, if the Black person was in the wrong, then he has to suffer the consequences. You don't protect somebody for doing something wrong. If a criminal is Black or white, they're hurting the community and they need to be punished. So we need to get rid of the bad Blacks and the evil whites and make our communities safe. And we need to manage better all the things within our culture. We need to manage our children better. We need to manage our money better. We need to manage how we take care of ourselves better. Health care starts with us, and we need to do that and not just look for an excuse not to do what we are supposed to do. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your call, Brother Al. I see my sister Anita. Anita's on, holding on, hanging in there. Anita, I want to get you in here to keep it real. Anita, listening to us from Chapel Hill. You're keeping it real. Good afternoon, my sister. Anita, are you there? All right. Well, I see Todd is on. Todd, I know you want to talk to Sister Jennifer Jones-Austin. Sister Jennifer had to take another call and leave us, but I know that you are here listening to us from Cleveland. I want to get you in. You're keeping it real. Good afternoon. Do you have Todd? All right. Tell me who this is.
Oh, Evangelist Ramsey.
Hello, Evangelist Ramsey. You're keeping it real. I didn't know that was you.
Listen, I didn't know either that you were talking to me because I'm on another line. I said, wait a minute, it's kind of quiet on the line. What's going on? Anyway, I'm going to be very brief. Thank you, Queen, for letting me get in. Thank you for everything you do. I thank you so very much. I'm trying to get rest as we speak because I know midnight is coming very soon. So I want to be rested and full of energy and life and all that like you used to seeing me. But I just thank you for listen, we went to the 135th week this week. We had a little more people than usual, of course, but the thing that I really had appreciated was that they had some young people that was never there before, but they came with someone. And I gave them an opportunity to chant a little bit. You know, I didn't have to ask permission. It's what I thought I should do. So I let them do it. And they took, did what they had to do. They fit right in, okay? One person's name was Christian. I said, we have a minister Christian. He said, I met him. So he's Christian. Pastor Hall is his son. Then his son and, his son's son was there too. They all named Christian. I said, boy, y'all are full of Christ. I love it. Christian. I said, I was making fun, but I was having fun. I said, I know y'all got with a name like Christian, you got to be full of Christ, right? And they was just, admiring me and stuff. So they'll probably talk about me at another time, probably at the huddle or whatever, how I involved them and kept them active and things like that and made them feel welcome, But my thing is, this, everything you said earlier was so on point. You spoke about a lot. I can't even go over everything you were speaking because I was listening to you for the 39 minutes I was on hold, and I was listening. But, the thing that we have to do, like you said, the younger people have ideas and strategies, and it's fine. And so does the older people because they, like you said, they might have grew up in the churches in the basement, and now things are different because we're in a different time. But the only thing I put that around, like you mentioned, is respect. We have to respect each other. Respect each other's ideas. And that's good because we can learn. Help me teach you. Teach each one. We never stop learning from one another. And then the older ones, I'm going to say this about some of them. I'm not speaking to everyone, so I don't want everybody backlashing later on, putting things in the chat. I just want to say with the older ones, right, it's not just that you have all the ideas. Everybody has an idea. We can put your idea, my idea, your idea, and make it work, make it happen, right? But when we start knocking each other, then we're defeating the purpose of why we're fighting together. We're supposed to fight together, not together in unity, not each other. And that's what's going on. So many people, I don't think you should chant that. Why not? Why not? Trump can say whatever he wants to say about us, call you and your mama anything he want to call you, and you're okay with that. But as soon as he mentioned Trump, why would you say his name? Why not? He's a liar. He's a thief. Why should we not say his name? Why he's stealing from you, from the poor, or, enforcing to give to the rich, that's fine. But I just wanted to say that. So thank you for letting me come on. I'll see you in the morning.
I'll see you in the morning. Thank you for all the hard work and commitment and dedication you have given to the movement, Evangelist Ramsey. I'll see you in the morning. Thank you for standing for DEI, and thank you for continuing the work, 135 weeks strong, keeping DEI alive. Thank you for all those who called in and spoke with me today on Keeping It Real. Y'all know we'll be in Washington again tomorrow, where we'll be live at the Lincoln Memorial live at 9 o'clock a.m. to stand up to defend the vote. But as Reverend Sharpton tells you, whatever you do, wherever you go, and however you feel, make sure you tell someone. Rev told you, Dominique is telling you, you got to keep it real. Keep it real.